Okay, we're recording. Welcome back. We're up to Masechtas Chagigah, page Vov A, which is 6a, and we're up to the verse that we learned in the Mishnah, Bashamai Amram Hiru Shtai Kesef. So I would like to just quickly jump back to the Mishnah. We learned in the Mishnah an argument between Bashamai and Bashilo. Bashamai said you should be spending more money on the first offering, which is the oila, which is the offering that goes totally for Hashem. You spend double than what you're spending on the second offering, which is the Chagigah, which goes part of it to the owner, so they should have the meat for Yom Tov. Basil says the opposite. Basil says you should spend double 2 kesef on your offering, meaning the second offering that you'll be getting to eat from, versus the offering that goes for Hashem, you should only spend 1 kesef. That's the argument in the Mishnah. And the Gemara is going to dissect now the differences, why they hold that way, what's the thinking behind it. And it's going to be logical, it's going to be with Pesikim, with verses in the Torah as to what's more important, what stands out more. And I was thinking of making a chart as to organizing who says what and why, but hope we can get away without it. So we're going to have to just concentrate and stay on topic. So Tuni Rabbunim, the Rabbunim learned. Vashamai Amrim, the Vashamai say, Huri Ishtai Kesef, that the first offering, that's the oila, you have to spend 2 kesef, the Chagigah Mu'u Kesef. And for the Chagigah, the second offering, you only spend 1. And he says a reasoning behind it. Why? The first one, the offering, the oila, goes totally for Hashem. And if you give a present to Hashem, spend more. It's more important. It's a nicer offering, so spend more there. The Chagigah is not fully going to Hashem. It's something that you get to eat from it as well. So for yourself, you don't need to spend that much. But for Hashem, spend more. So that's one reasoning why he says so. And another reason, there's one Yom Tov, the Yom Tov of Shavuot. It's called Atzeret. And that holiday, the Torah has instructed us to bring a lot more offerings of oilas than versus shlomim. And therefore, I see the Torah likes a oila more than a shlomim, because when it comes to a holiday, the Torah tells us to bring more, it tells us to bring more of the oila. So therefore, Bashamai says you should spend more money on the oila versus what you're spending on your Chagigah, because that's more chosen or more picked by the Torah as that should be increased, meaning that Hashem wants that more. Okay, so these are the 2 reasons as to Shammai why he says what he says. Later we'll see why he doesn't want to agree to Basil, but first let's go over to Basil and see why does he say what he says. Basil Amram Uriya Mukesef. The first offering, the oila that goes to Hashem, you only spend 1. The Chagigah Shtai Kesef. For the Chagigah you should spend double. Why? So he says the first reason in Chagigah Yeshlo Lifnai Adibir. Lifnai Adibir, what means is before the giving of the Torah. The Yidden were bringing offerings in the desert, and the offerings that they would bring there was the Chagigah. Masha'ain kan beriya, but the oilas riyah, they didn't bring. So this is what Basil says, they didn't bring then oilas riyah, which is the offering that goes fully for Hashem. That's one reasoning. So he thinks the Chagigah should be stronger, is more chosen, is more valued. And another reason, Matzini Benasiyam Sheriba Bahem Makusa Beshlomim Yosim Riba Oilis. At the time when the temple was renewed, was welcomed, I don't know how it's called in English, a welcome party, when it was erected, and now everyone is starting to do it. All the tribes, every tribe, the leader of each tribe would bring a special offerings as in welcoming using the temple. And on those offerings, they brought a lot more Chagigah than what they brought for oilers. And therefore, I see that people would want to bring more Chagigahs. It should be more spent on the Chagigah as to what you would spend on the oiler. I'm using the Hebrew terms here, and I'm assuming that by now we're all accustomed with those. What's the oiler and what's the Chagigah, and which is a shluma. Okay. Basilo, now the Gemara is sticking with Basil, and now you want to see, okay, so you both brought your reasonings why we should spend more on that offering that you're saying, but why don't you want to agree to the other side? So now we're talking to Basil. Why are you my tamalei amrik Shammai? Why don't you agree to what Shammai said? So the Amr what the Shammai says, Re'iyah adifa, that the oiler's Re'iyah comes first. Why? The oiler killer legavoy, because the carbon oiler goes totally for Hashem. Hillel says that's not a reason for it to be more expensive. Adarabah. On the contrary, Chagigah adifa, Chagigah, which is the shlomim, that should be stronger. You know why? There is achilas. There are more people eating from it, so you got to spend more money on that. Versus the oila only goes to Hashem, which is only like one person eating from it. So don't spend that much there. Spend more on where you have more people eating. Make sure that's bigger. And the second reason that he says the Ka'amris Nailev Matzeres, that you learn from the holiday of Shavuot, that they brought more shlomim, he says you can't bring proof from there. Dunan korban yuchet mikorban yuchet, va'ain dunan korban yuchet mikorban tzedek. So he says the offerings that was brought on Shavuos wasn't an individual offering; it was a communal offering, where the whole community would bring more. In fact, on a holiday, you're not even allowed to bring personal offerings because you can't just slaughter. There's a whole big argument in that. What kind of offerings can you bring on a holiday and on Shabbos for sure? You can't just slaughter animals then. So it's only the offerings that the tzibur, that the Torah has commanded us to bring, those offerings are brought. So you can't bring me proof from there, which is an offering from the communal, that they brought more shlumim to tell me, they brought more oilers to tell me that I have to invest more in oil when it comes to personal offerings, because it's totally different. Okay, so Basil explained his stance, why he says what he says, and why he doesn't want to agree to Beis Shammai. Now we're moving over to Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai, my tamle amre to Basil. Why are you not agreeing to what Basil says? The Ka'amras, what does he say? He says, Chagigah difa. You know why Chagigah is stronger? The Yeshua Lifnai Dibber. It was before the giving of the Torah, before Matan Torah, the Yidden were brought Chagigah. It says, Re'iyah Nama Yeshua Lifnai Dibber. Shammai argues on this part too. And he says that the offerings that the Yidden brought in the desert before giving the Torah was also Oilers Re'iyah. They didn't just bring Chagigah. So therefore, it's not proof that a Chagigah should be more valued. And now the second thing that Basil said, the Ka'amras Nailet Menasiyim, the Nasiim, that they brought their offerings, when the Nasiim means the heads of each tribe, when they brought their offerings, you want to tell me that they brought more Shalomim, more Chagigah? Dunan Duver Hanoyek Ledoides, Bedover Hanoyek Ledoides. You have to learn, when you want to learn something for how to do in the generations to come, you can only compare it to something that the Torah has told us to do each generation. You can't, you can't bring me proof from something that was just a one-time offering. So those heads of tribes, that they brought their offerings, that was a one-time thing. You can't bring me proof from that. Rather, bring me proof from the offerings that was brought on the holiday of Shavuot, because that's what the Torah commanding us to do each generation. Every year we have to do it that way. So that makes more sense to bring it from there versus to bring me from something that happened only at one time. So now we got some clarity. We got a good big fight. Each one has clarified their stance, and each one has said why they don't agree with the others. So the Gemara is now going to start dissecting this and start looking into, at least on this one item, that we have noticed that there's another argument here within this argument. What kind of offerings was brought in the desert before the giving of the Torah? Basil says it was given Chagigah, which was Shlomim, and Bashamai says it was also Oilers Re'iyah, which is the offerings totally for Hashem. So now the Gemara is going to go dive into that part and see where do we see that? Where in the phrases can we make out what kind of offerings were given? So Basil, from where does Basil say that they gave, that the Yidden offered Chagigah, which is the Shlomim, before giving of the Torah? So he says the Chsiv, because it says in Pusik, because it says that they brought Shlomim, and a Shlomim, which is the offering that the owner also gets to eat from, is the Chagigah. So the Gemara asks, it also says in that same phrase, I wonder if I can jump into the phrase here real quick. Tanakh. Here, Shmas. So the Pussy clearly states that they brought oilers, which is the offering for Hashem, going totally for Hashem. And then it says, and they brought Shlomim, which is, Basil saying that this is Chagigah. So the Pussy clearly says they also brought oilers. So he asks, Basil, why do you think there wasn't any oilers there? So the Gemara answers, Basil holds that those oilers that was brought here in the before the Torah was given, Sheikrivi Yisrael Bamidbar was oilers Tomat Hana. Okay, so let's explain. There are many different offerings that was brought in the Beis Hamikdash. Some were brought daily, some were brought only on the weekends for Shabbos, some were each month for Chodesh, and then there was holiday offerings. And this is offerings besides the personal offerings that people would bring. Every day there was an offering called the Oilas Tomet, which means there was an oiler that was brought in the morning and an oiler brought in the evening. These two were always brought each and every day. And that doesn't count for anything because that comes from the money of the tzibur. It's from the community. Everyone paid in. We paid a half a shekel, the machzas a shekel that was paid. One of the things that was paid for was for this offering. This offering, in the morning, atoned for all the sins that was done over the night, and the one in the evening was done to atone for all the sins done in the morning. Again, they're quoting different areas of Shas that this is mentioned. So, Basil says, yes, when the Torah says that there was oilers and Shlomim, those oilers were the carbon tumet that was brought each and every day. And therefore, you cannot bring any proof of that. And this is the essence of the argument between Bashama and Basil. Because Bashama is here, I found my spot back. I lost it when I closed the tab. So Basil says, Bamidbar oilus tumet hava. It was the offering that was brought each and every day and has nothing to do with any holiday or anything special. Bashama is saying, no, oilus shehikri yisru bamidbar oilus re'iyah hava. It was the oiler for the holiday that we came to see Hashem. It was not the oilus tumet what the Torah is mentioning here. Okay, so now we have the source in the Torah as to where their argument derives from. Now the Gemara is going to explode it. It's going to blow up. And we're going to see that it's not just Bashama and Basil arguing over this. We have a team, 3 against 3. Okay? So Umar Abaya says, Bashama, Rebbe Luzer, Rebbe Yishmuel, all these 3, Kilo Savri, Kilo Svirilai, they all 3 hold, they all 3 say that the offering that was offered in the midbar before giving the Torah was oilers re'iyah. Wasn't the regular, it was the special one you bring on holiday. Basil, the Rebbe Akiva, the Rebbe Yossi HaGlili, these 3, Kilo Savri, they all hold, they all say that no, it wasn't the special offering, it was the regular offering that was meant to be brought each and every day, and therefore you cannot learn There was the Chagigah before. Sorry, I'm holding up with my regular Gemara on the side. Okay, so now the Gemara is going to show us where do we see each and every one saying this. Bashamai, where do we know Bashamai? Who don't bring him? We just learned that he holds that in that Pusik that says they brought Oila, that it was the Oila Sriya. Reb Shmuel, how do we know about Reb Shmuel? The Tanya, because we learned Reb Shmuel says, Klulas Nemre Besinai. And we're going over to page 6b. The details that we said in the Oil Moed. So what does he say? He says like this. When Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Har Sinai and he got the Torah, Hashem gave him the ideas of all the mitzvahs, but not all the details as how it's performed and what needs to be done about it. Just the idea that this is what you're going to do, you're going to bring an offering. That's what Reb Shmuel says. Reb Kiva says, Reb Kiva Omer no. Klulas v'prutos nemre b'Sinai. When Moshe Rabbeinu went on to Har Sinai, Hashem told him everything, the idea and all the details involving it. V'shirim b'Oil Moed. But then, in Oil Moed, when Hashem called him to talk to him, to give him more mitzvahs, it was only repeated then. But he already got all the details at Har Sinai. And not only that, he says, and in Arvas Moav, which is one of the places in the desert where the Yidden would travel, there it was repeated a third time. So Hashem told it to Moshe Rabbeinu 3 times, according to Rebbe Kiva. Now, because of this fact that Rabbi Shmuel says that Moshe did not know all the details when he got the Torah, he only learned all the details later, it cannot be that the offering that they brought in the Beis Hamikdash at that time of giving the Torah, that it was the Oilus Tumah, that was the regular offering. Why? If you want to say Oilus Hikri Yisrael Midbar, that the offering that the Yidden brought in the Midbar at that time before they had the temple, before they had the Mishkan, Oilus Tumah Tava, that it was the regular oil that you have to bring every day. Mi Ike Midde the Meikura. Is there anything that ever happened that in the beginning, loy boye hefshet v'netiach? Hefshet v'netiach means the preparation of the offering, the details, that you have to skin the meat and you have to slice it up into pieces and you have to wash each piece and put it onto the mizbeach, on the altar to be burned. All these are details. These details haven't been taught to Moshe according to Rabbi Shmuel. So is there any possibility that in the beginning they didn't do that? And then in the end they had to do that? It's impossible, because when the Yidden started doing it, they have done it the right way right away. And since he didn't know how to do it, he couldn't have brought that, because he doesn't yet know the details. So it must have been the oil that they brought was only the regular oil of Oilus Re'iyah, which is not something that's continuous every day. It's only the 3 times a year. And therefore, that could have changed next year. Okay, they learned more, they know what to do. Not something that's done each and every day. That doesn't change. They know right away how to do it. So therefore, you see from this that Shmuel holds that the offering was the Oilus Re'iyah and not the regular daily offerings. The loser, where do we know that loser says that the offering was Oilus? Wait a second. Did I confuse here? What does Rabbi Shmuel say? Rabbi Shmuel says, Rabbi Shmuel is according to Bashama, which says it was the Oilus Re'iyah. Yeah, okay. So yeah, I did say, well, Oilus Re'iyah, and it couldn't be something that changed. Now Rabbi Loser also says it was Oilus Re'iyah. Okay. I said we have to keep focused here. I'm already losing myself. So the loser. Now we're getting to the loser, which he holds according to the same thing as Beis Shammai, that it was Oilus Re'iyah, not the daily offering. The Tanya, because we learned Oilus Tumah Huasiu B'Har Sinai, that the offering that the Yidden brought at Har Sinai, Lezer says, Maseyu Namre B'Sinai. When the Torah says the Oilus Tumah that the Yidden brought in Sinai They didn't bring the oil stomach there. He atzmaloi karva, they didn't brought it. He translates this phrase, oil stomach to Asir by Sinai, means the oil stomach that you learned how to do it by Sinai, but you didn't bring it until there was a Mishkan later, or maybe even until they came into Eretz Yisrael. They didn't bring the oil in the desert, the daily offering. So therefore, you see clearly that he says that there was no oil stomach. They only learned about it, but they didn't actually bring it. Now, the continuation of that same phrase is that from that same brisa that we learned before, that Kiva says, Karvu, they did bring it. The Shivloi Pasco, and they did not stop from bringing it. So the Blazer says they only learned about it, but they didn't bring it. But Kiva says, yes, they offered it and they never stopped. Elumayim ni mikayim, what are we translating? What do we make out of this pusik where it says, Zevuchem eminichu higashtem li b'midbar abum shunu b'ais Yisrael? When the Nuvi came, the prophet came to critic the Yidden, to try to give them mitzvah to change, he says, Hashem complains on you. Have you brought to me the offerings that you were meant to bring those 40 years while you were in the desert? Meaning, Reb Lezer says that it wasn't brought. They only learned about it. Reb Kiva says it was brought. Then if it was brought, then why did Hashem complain that it wasn't brought? So the Gemara answers, Shifta shalayvi shaloi avda v'rezura hemikdidi oisa. Fascinating thing here. I want to come back to this later. But what he's answering, that Klal Yisrael, they didn't bring the offering. It was only the tribe of Levi that they brought it. Why? Because they haven't sinned at the idol. They didn't worship Avodah Zarah. So they didn't feel distant. The Yidden, they felt distant. They couldn't get themselves together to bring it. So Rabbi Kiva is also agreeing it was brought, but it wasn't brought by the Yidden. It was only brought by Shevet Levi. So this is where we finish the all three that are according to Bais Shammai. So we learned about Bais Shammai. We learned about Reb Luzer, that he says that they didn't bring the offering. So the offering, there must have been Oilus Re'iyah. And we learned about Rabbi Shmuel that it must be they brought the Oilus Re'iyah because they didn't change. If they started something, they wouldn't change. Now we're going to the other three. Basil, how do we know Basil that it was the offering of Re'iyah? No, that was the Oilus Tumit that didn't bring the Oilus Re'iyah, because we learned that. Rabbi Kiva, how do we know Rabbi Kiva? Because we also learned right here that Rabbi Kiva says they brought the Oilus Tumit and they never stopped. So they didn't bring the other oil, which was the Oilus Re'iyah. They only bring Chagigah. Rabbi Yosef Glili, how do we know that Rabbi Yosef Glili also holds according to Bais Hillel? The Tanya, because we learn Rabbi Yosef Glili says, Shloishu mitzvahs nistadi Yisrael ba'aloisum l'regel. 3 mitzvahs the Yidden have been instructed to do when they come to the pilgrim, when they come up to be Oile Regel. What are the 3 mitzvahs? Re'iyah, which is the first one, which is Oilus Re'iyah. Chagigah, which is the second offering to bring a shlomim. V'simcha, and the third, which is also an offering, because the simcha is to be happy. And the Gemara says to be happy, you need meat. So if the Chagigah wasn't enough, you had to bring another offering, which was for simcha. And Rabbi Yossi Aglili elaborates on it. He says, Yesh b'riyah masha'ayin b'shtayim. There is something with the first offering that the other 2 doesn't have. The Yesh b'chagigah sha'ayin b'shtayim. There's something in the Chagigah that the other 2 doesn't have. The Yesh b'simcha sha'ayin b'shtayim. And the simcha also has something that the other 2, the Riyah and Chagigah, doesn't have. And he's saying it out. Yesh b'riyah sha'ayin b'shtayim. There is something in the first one that the other 2 doesn't have. The first one goes totally for Hashem. The other 2 don't go totally to Hashem. They're shlomim. They're not an oila. Yes, Chagigah has something that the other 2 don't have. Chagigah was something that was brought before Matan Torah in the desert. The other 2 weren't. Yesh b'simcha ma she'ain b'shtayim. There's something in simcha that doesn't have the other two. Sheha simcha noheges b'nushim even nushim ma she'ain b'shtayim. Simcha is also obligated for man and woman. We have learned before that Chagigah is not obligated for woman. So therefore, each one of them has something. And now we have learned clearly that Rabbi Yossi Aglili says that the Chagigah was something that was done before in the desert where the oil was not. So we see clearly that Rabbi Yossi Aglili holds according to Beis Hillel. So now we have 3 against 3, and we have proof that everyone holds that way. But one of them has a very weak link, very weak proof. And the Gemara is going to challenge it, and actually they're going to win it. It's going to become 2 against 3. So where is it? Remember we learned about Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel said that the details of the mitzvahs was learned in the Mishkan, versus the ideas were given at Sinai. And the whole proof was because they couldn't have started doing something and not do it the right way. Okay, so here's Rabbi Shmuel, my Tama Kumoikis like a Bashamai. Why did we think that Rabbi Shmuel must hold according to Bashamai? Because if you would say the offering that the Yidden would bring in the midbar was the daily offerings of the Oila, is there then an offering that in the beginning didn't need to be skinned and cut into pieces, and at the end it does need? This was our proof. So Mur says, how is that proof? Rabbi Yossi Aglili, the Umar, we just learned from Rabbi Yossi Aglili, he says, Rabbi Yossi Aglili clearly stated that it was the Oilus Tumah, and the Oilus Tumit, that was the daily offering, and he also clearly states that in the beginning they didn't know all the details, they just burned it as one piece, and later they learned they have to skin it, they have to wash it, cut it into pieces. So why do you make it so impossible they couldn't have changed it in the middle? Now, how do you know Rabbi Yossi Aglili says that in the beginning they weren't doing that? The Tanya, because we learned Rabbi Yossi Aglili the offering that the Yidden would bring in the midbar didn't need to be skinned and cut into pieces. Only at the time of being in the oil moed, when Moshe learned all the details, that's when he knew about all the details of the mitzvah. But until then, they didn't know the details. They still bring the offerings without doing all the details. So the Mura says, you know what, you're right. Sami Mikan Rabbi Shmuel. Got to take out Rabbi Shmuel from the equation, and it's only 2 against 3 because we have no proof. Our proof that it cannot be that it changed, it's not such a strong proof because we see there is one of the sages that clearly states that it did change. I think we'll pause here. We're moving over here. We're coming into the next page already. It's in the same topic going forward, but it deviates a little bit off as to what kind of offerings it was. Wait a second. Okay, now I'm going to do a little bit more. We're going to stop right here at the bottom of page 6b. Okay, Boy Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda asked, Hi Kru Hi Kesef. When you read this pusik, and this pusik we quoted before, I'm going to bring it up again. So it's Tanakh, Shemas. This pusik, we quoted it before. How do you read this pusik? And I'm going to first read it, and then we're going to see how the question plays out. V'yishlach narai, v'yishlach es narai b'nai Yisrael. They sent out the youngsters of the kids of the Yidden, of the Israelites. I have a hard time with that word. V'yali oilas, and they brought oilas. V'yizbichi zvuchim, and they brought other offerings, shalomim, which was a shalomim. Lashem for Hashem, Purim, cows. So he's asking, you finish off this phrase with cows. What does this cows go on to? Was it only the Zebuchim Shlomim, was cows, or was it also the oilers? Okay, because this pusik doesn't break up in anything here. Reading this here, it's hard to tell. And remember, in the Torah scroll, there are no punctuations. So he's asking what kind of offerings this was. And when you see the pusik, you see it's how it stands out, finishing off with cows. So, Boyd of Chizda, how is this pusik to be read? They brought oilers, kvusim, sheep. Then you continue with the pusik. They brought cows, because it says cows, that's only for the second half of the pusik. Both of these were cows. How are we to read this pusik? So the Gemara asks, what difference does it make? So it may not make a difference as to in history what happened, but he's asking it, you see, when you read the pusik, it has these signs on it as to how it should be read with the tune. Do you have to raise your voice? Do you go lower down? It's the tone that you sing this phrase. And then you make a pause where you stop, you take a breath, and you think, and I need to know that. So to know that, I need to know if Purim goes on to the whole phrase or just in the last phrase, so I would know where to stop. So Rav Acha B'rai the Rava, Rav Acha the son of Rava Omer says, Le'olam harai oila, Le'omer, he says, harai oila, aha, ka'oila sheti yisrael. Okay. I'm already laughing because I think I'm going to make you laugh here. He says, you know what's the difference? When someone takes upon himself, I will bring an offering to the same offering the Yidden would bring in the desert. Now, what does he have to bring? A sheep or a cow? So that's the difference. So that's why I need to know. So if somebody comes and he says, I'm going to bring an offering the same as them, what am I obligated now? So my Purim Hava, Kusim Hava. What was it? So I'm going to answer Taika. No, we don't know. Good question. Okay, so I'm going to pause here. And I want to come back to what are we walking away with here today? What are we taking away from all we have learned here? Argument back and forth. Every little details means something. Now, besides the fact that the Gemara wasn't afraid to say, hey, I don't know the answer, Taika, good question. Okay. And even the places as to where this question would be enough committed, would make a difference, is so rare. For someone who's going to say, I'm going to bring that offering, I need to know what it meant, what it was. I mean, like, anything could be that case. Okay, you can say that argument to anything. I need to know what it was, because what if somebody says, I'm marrying this woman, if that was so? Now, is that woman married or not? Right? So you need to know. You can say that on anything. So what the Gemara is saying here is that, yes, it's okay to not know something, and we're not stuck. Life goes on, the Torah still means something, and yes, there's a Messiah as how to we have accepted. According to how to sing the tunes, we have a Messiah as to how it should be. But we don't know if Purim means the cows means just in the second half or in the full half. But I also said something before which is very, very strong. I want to come back to. Before I scroll up, I want to mark our location. So I remember this is where we're up to. Now we learned something about the oilers that was brought in the desert. And Hashem says, you didn't bring oilers to me. And it was Shevet Levi that brought it. What am I making of this? What am I walking away of this? There are many times in life we see segulos. Okay, I'm not going to mock any of them, but I have a very hard time with these segulos. I'm just going to take one for an example. Again, I'm not mocking it. I'm just bringing it as an example as to a struggle that I have with it. There is this big segula that whenever you take out 3 Sifra Torah in Shul, people say that's a very strong time to pray. That's when you can get answered for whatever you're praying for. And there are many, many, many segulas like this where people say, oh, when that happens, now is the time to pray. And I'm like, well, I have a hard time. Why it sits so hard with me, these segulas, is that what do you mean? Now you're holding Hashem by his shoulder and now you're going to get him to do what you want him to do? Is that what it means, that you have now a Eis Rutzon? Now you have a segula, something that you can do? Makes no sense. Hashem loves us equally all the time. And he wants to give us everything all the time. So what is this segula all about? So the answer that I live with is that people have issues. When a person sins, he distances himself from Hashem. He thinks less of Hashem. He thinks more of himself. And he even may reach a point where he's ashamed to come before Hashem. I've just done something so bad. How can I go and shield daven now? How can I show my face to do something? People can sometimes fall in a pit like that. These obstacles are not real obstacles. These are obstacles that people make themselves. And for those obstacles, you need a segula to get yourself out. You need to be able to tell your own Yetzer Hara, yes, I know I sinned. Yes, I know I have no place to stand in front of Hashem and show my face. But you know what? There's 3 Sefer Torah coming out now. It's a special time. I can do it. So this whole Segillah thing is not really because Hashem is changing. No. It's something that helps me crawl out of my hole and take my obstacle off and tell, no, I can open my heart now and pour it out to Hashem, even though in a normal time I would be so ashamed to do that. I'm not worthy. Who am I to open my mouth? And this is what I'm taking away here. The Yidden did not bring the Korban Tumah all these 40 years, according to Rebbe Akiva, because they sinned. They couldn't get their act together and face Hashem and bring an offering. They've worshipped idol. They've done avodah zarah. And it wasn't a true thing. Hashem complained, why didn't you bring me? Only Shaivat Levi, the ones who didn't sin, they had the guts to come up and bring that offering. Hashem wasn't happy about that. Hashem said, you should have continued bringing that. It was your obstacle. It was your limitation that you caused upon yourself not to bring it because you felt so distant. I was never distant. You with me on this? Any questions? So yeah, very, very strong message I take from this. And these segulas are to help people open up. But if someone truly knows this, Hasidus teach us that if you fall through with the biggest sin, second later you can still be the biggest tzaddik. You still walk into Shiel and cry out nishmas to Hashem. Hashem, yes, I did what I did. I'll take care of that later. But right now, I'm spending with you fully. And yes, I'm regretting for what I did. I'm ashamed for what I did. But it's not going to stop me from standing up right now and be fully connected, be fully in with total love with Hashem.
I think it's the whole I feel that when people fall, this is the acknowledgement of that is something that is much bigger, and this is the only time when you could do tshuva and actually go back, right? Because otherwise,
if you wouldn't have felt your fault, then why are you doing tshuva for?
Right, I think the acknowledgement of the fact that there's a wrongdoing is the first step of the tshuva, and then you come back because unfortunately this is just the way it is.
Yep.
You can't
say in other places that when someone sins and he's ashamed of it, then he's forgiven. Now, does a person feel forgiven? He's ashamed of it. He doesn't feel forgiven. So the point we're taking out of here is that don't stop continuing to do mitzvahs, even though you feel distant now because of something you shouldn't have done. You fell through, okay, we'll deal with it. But continue, get right up, continue with what you're doing now, and we'll come back to what.
But you said this is just like everything else in life, you know. He could be. I mean, take anything, you know. Like there's always.
So when it comes to personal relationships, me and my wife, if I would do something that got her upset, I know now is not to go to her and ask her, can she make something special for me? She's now upset at me. Right? With Hashem, that's not the case. With Hashem, I've done something and I feel distance from him now. Now, did I really make him upset about me? Yeah, he may be upset about me, but it does not change his love that I can still go over and ask him for something for me.
I think it's a different kind of relationship. It's not, you know, we cannot compare. And I think,
yes, but that's where the mistake comes from.
Was that?
Because we think that's where the mistake comes from, because we think it's the same type of relationship. He's upset with me now. I haven't done tshuva on what I've done. I can't go ask for something now.
You know, Hashem doesn't have a character, I feel, right? When you're dealing with a person, every person has a character, right? You know, Hashem doesn't have a character. This is just it's a different level.
It's bigger than anything. Nothing we can do, we can hurt him. We can't hurt him.
It's correct. It's a different level. One thing is that there's some sort of a disconnect. Yes, perhaps, but there's no character there. So this is why we don't question. Correct. This is why, you know, it happens where it happens. We're going to find out later why it happened the way it happened, or what happened and why, in certain senses, right? But when it comes to the comparison to the wife situation, I don't think it's a good comparison.
This is how we come from. Yeah. This is where we try to compare many things in life. And in fact, even our relationship to Hashem gets compared to many times to our personal relationships with our other people. But in this case, it's not a good comparison, because Hashem is way bigger and nothing we can do can hurt him.
Correct. Right. The only thing I want to go back to quickly is it does not sit in any logical way, is because nothing ever changed from a day one. Whatever was given in Sinai and going forward, nothing changed. And this is what makes me believe that certain rules in details, as you said, the details came to in effect when we actually were dealing with it directly. It was general aspect what was given, right? But then the details of it came after, because otherwise it does not make any sense. Because you can have detailed something, and because we didn't have temple, we had a mishkan later on, right? We were building it based on instructions, and so, you know, so as the all the rules and mitzvahs that came afterwards that we had to do when we had a temple already at the time, right? So if that wasn't there, how can we actually know what to do? In the details, we knew that it had to be done, but not the details, because nothing really changed, right?
Yeah.
We never changed anything. No rules were changed since.
Yeah.
We just don't do it because we don't have it.
Details. They must have known all the details before they started doing anything, because nothing changes.
No, I think what I'm trying to say is that certain details came in the picture when we actually had it.
So the details came later.
Right.
They couldn't have had all the details in the beginning because they didn't even have the temple. They couldn't imagine
Correct.
all everything there.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah.
You know,
So the only ones they saw it and they put it together one on one. Now you can give them the details is how it fills in.
unless there's only one argument that one can have. It's just like anything else. It was hidden. Then you learn and you put the puzzle together to understand the details later
That's
when you
the
actually
argument
have
that we learned before from Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva. Was there the details given or not? Now, Moshe Rabbani could have gotten all the details, but maybe he couldn't remember it all, and it was repeated to him in Oil Moed. Nobody disagrees on that part, that the details was given in the Oil Moed, which was in the Mishkan, which was later, and then a third time in Arvas Moed. Nobody argues on that. The question is, how much of the details was also given at Sinai? Could have been given and Moshe didn't remember, or it could not have been given because there was nothing to relate to, so he couldn't have gotten all the details. This is what you're saying.
What I'm saying is that it was probably general. It was general information given, and the details were either perhaps came up later when they actually were facing it, or perhaps other option that it's always just like everything else in the Torah. Everything is hidden, and then you have to go through it to understand the details.
Interesting, very interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Because you're gonna have five tzaddikims, doing the same work to understand, and five different opinions, right?
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, with the pure logic, if I'll tell you something, how to build something, but you're not building it right now, would you actually remember when you go in and to actually build it? You're gonna start, and then you're gonna come up with things and then it's gonna be written down, and going forward, this is how it's gonna be.
Yeah.
Because you actually did with your hands already. But I gave you the details. It's not going to mean much to you because it's not real.
It's not real. Yeah.
Right.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.